activities, or as we say in French, les activités orales, are important because they help FSL learners practice their speaking abilities and their oral comprehension. They enhance competencies in expression and communication. These activities allow learners to develop their understanding and identify and solve problems together with collaboration and authentic interaction. Peers interacting together can have rich and purposeful collaboration and learning, and teachers can model this kind of speaking behavior with different scenarios. Oral communication is not just about presentations like I'm doing now, but there's also things to do like dramatic skits and having talks and interacting with real live francophone speakers. This is related to the curriculum because oral is the most important part of FSL and the curriculum. So the next PowerPoint is going to talk to you a little bit about how to use rich and authentic, engaging oral activities in class. Stay tuned.
Okay, so constructive feedback is very important. As teachers, we have to make sure to give specific feedback and constructive feedback or commentary on student assignments and student presentations and all sorts of different evaluations, whether they be big ones or little ones. So saying something like bravo or excellent is not just enough. You have to sort of go into depth and explain. So for example, you could say something like, Pearl, good job, you did a really good job doing extensive research on your presentation and it was well put together. But I would also suggest to practice your presentation a little bit more. Come to me for help if you'd like with pronunciation of words so that you look at your audience more when you're presenting, so that you look more at ease with what you're presenting. So a commentary like that would be good because you're being constructive but in a positive way, and you're giving them sort of an action plan of how they could improve. So that would be something that would be good feedback.
For the constructive feedback about my presentation.
You're welcome. So up next is a lesson that we had created that is authentic, engaging, and interactive. It focuses on oral communication and has an activity that encompasses all of what has been learned in the lesson that Austin has tried out with his class to see if it worked well. And up next is the explanation of the lesson.
So this is a lesson that I did on Thursday with my grade 12 extended French class. It's called Les expressions idiomatiques, idiomatic expressions in French from different francophone countries around the world. So this lesson taught students about the different expressions, and there's also a heavy oral component where they have to do an activity in class. So when students enter the classroom, I had a galerie d'expression. So imagine this as an art gallery with 10 different pictures posted around the classroom representing each different expression. I had students come in and explain and talk amongst their peers what they think each expression means. And then after 10 minutes, I had them come back, sit down, and regroup as a class to do the lesson. So in the lesson, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show each picture with the expression, and I'm going to ask the students, what do you think it means? En regardant l'image, quel est le sens de chaque expression? Qu'est-ce que cette expression veut dire? Et partagez vos pensées. So I will let them share their thoughts before I teach them what the expression actually means. For example, avaler des couleuvres. It's an expression from Switzerland, and you have a picture up here. So I would have this slide up, I would ask the students what they think it means, they explain, then I would tell them, être si insulté que vous ne pouvez pas répondre. I would explain to them what it means. Same thing for the next one. Avoir des bijoux is an expression from Quebec. They would put up their hands, tell me what they think it means based on this image, and then I would tell them, être riche, avoir beaucoup d'argent. This expression means when somebody is really rich and they have a lot of money. So, I would do that for the rest of the expressions. Jusqu'à la gare, poser un lapin à quelqu'un, brosser les cours from Belgium, ne pas assister à la classe, it's when you skip class, au bord de la crevaison, Acadie, au bord de la mort, avoir la bouche sucrée, it's when you talk a lot, parler beaucoup, être comme lait et citron, le Haïti, quand c'est difficile à bien s'entendre avec quelqu'un, camembert from Senegal, when your feet stink after a long day, virer son pantalon, être le boss des bécosses. So I'm sure, as you can tell from this image, it's when somebody is really bossy. And the students would tell me that. That's what it is. When somebody has a dictatorship-like attitude, very authoritative in their group project. So now we come to the activité en classe. So this is an improvisation activity. You will put the students in groups of 3. I like to do that because I find stronger students often stay together and work together, and weaker students often stay together. Friends like to work with each other as well, so this is a good way to change it up in your classroom. Put the students in groups of 3. Have them sit down with their group, and a member from each group will choose a scenario out of a hat. Give them, depending on the level of the class and how much time you have, give them about 5 minutes to make a brainstorm. Comment utiliserez-vous une ou deux de ces expressions dans le scénario? How would you use 1 or 2 of these expressions learned in the scenario that you're given? So we have the groups here. Ce que je cherche. This is really important because I think as teachers we need to be giving them good feedback, even if it's a formative evaluation. So I made clear, je vous donnerai la rétroaction formative, ce n'est pas pour une note, it's not for a mark. And the way I like to teach, I like to give students checklists so they know what they've accomplished and what they still need to get done. It's a good way for students to know their progress. So, est-ce que j'ai bien compris l'expression? Did I understand the expression? Est-ce que j'ai bien employé les expressions dans un contexte qui fait du sens? Did I use the expressions in a context that makes sense? Est-ce que j'ai bien prononcé les mots? Did I pronounce the words properly? Est-ce que tous les membres du groupe ont participé? Did all the members of the group participate? Did they all have lines in the skit? Est-ce que j'ai parlé sans trop de pauses, trop d'hésitation, comme did I speak without hesitations and pauses? Est-ce que ma présentation est entre 1 à 3 minutes, pas plus? So again, this depends on your class and how big they are. So you would give each group, you would give them a copy of this checklist, and this would help them to create their improvisation presentation. But before you do that, give them an example. So this is a scenario pulled from a hat. You are in a group project, and one member in the group is very aggressive. He gives orders to everyone and he doesn't listen to anybody but himself. So based on the scenario, students would obviously choose être le boss des bécosses from the list of expressions because it makes sense for the scenario. This expression means when somebody has dictator-like attitude and very authoritative behavior, which obviously explains the situation, the scenario. So you would just give an example. So Austin is the dictator here. He says, Pearl, fais la recherche. Stéphanie, fais le PowerPoint. Finissez les travaux ce soir. Je veux 100%. Pearl responds, Austin, je ne peux pas finir les travaux ce soir. J'ai un test de maths demain et je dois réviser le test pour ce soir. Austin says, okay, but I want you to finish it this evening. So make time to finish it. And then Stephanie says, Austin, you're not reasonable at all. Pearl says, yeah, you're mean. Austin's like, quoi? What? Stephanie's like, tu es le boss des bécosses. So here, Stephanie used the expression in the scenario, and Pearl says, oui, tout à fait. Yeah, of course. Et puis ça continue. And that's an example that you would show students on how they can create a scenario. How they can create a skit based on the scenario. And when you have them work on this, have the expressions on the PowerPoint up on the screen. That way they can see the expressions all in one slide and they can use them in their scenario. And after that, you would give them feedback, tell them where they can improve. For example, if they need to improve on their pronunciation or if they didn't use the correct expression, etc. And then you would introduce them the final project. So this is an example of a final project. Les expressions idiomatiques et la francophonie. It's a group presentation. And obviously you would hand them out the rubric and the instructions for the project, which I will get into in a second. So that's an example of an interactive, fun, engaging activity where you have students get up from their desks, get off their feet, and practice their French in an oral, authentic, spontaneous setting. And this is what the curriculum of Ontario wants us to do. So this is a list of Francophone countries that you can cut up and students can pick them out of a hat. And each group of 3 or 4 will present on one of these countries. So we have la présentation de group presentations. So as you can see, I put you will work in the same groups as you did to do your scénette, your improvisation in class. You will choose one of the Francophone countries from the hat. And then there you have, write the name of your group here, and write the country of your group as well. So for the content of this presentation, what I like to do is I like to give students checklists, les listes de vérification, so that way they know, they can easily follow along and they know what they need to include in their work. So for the content of this presentation, décrivez la culture. What are the customs, habits, and traditions in the country? What are the type of food that are in the country? What are the religions or the values in society? What are any other languages that people speak in the region? Talk a bit about the geography. What are some popular places in the country? Can you describe the art, fashion, and talk a bit about the history of the region? Can you talk about the daily life of citizens who live there? So that's the main content. Now you have the comparison, which is taken directly out of the curriculum. So how does this Francophone community resemble, or how is it different from your community or your culture? So each member of the group has to answer this question, because obviously not all members in the group would come from the same culture. So they're making a comparison between their research and their own culture. And then now we have les expressions idiomatiques. They have to find 2 idiomatic expressions. So that can be Creole, for example, or another language that's popular in the country, because sometimes it's hard to find these expressions in French. But I don't think they would have a problem with finding these expressions in French. Then they have to find an image which corresponds and represents each expression. Then they have to describe briefly each expression in standard French so that we can understand what these expressions mean. So this is where I'm asking them to do exactly what I did in the lesson in class. Now, in terms of the format of the presentation, this is where differentiation comes in. Not all students like standing up there and talking. I get that. So as teachers, I think we should give our students different options so that way they could succeed. So I'm giving them some options here. They can make a video, but I wrote, make sure that the sound is clear and that we can hear you properly. They can make a PowerPoint. Make sure that there's not too many texts or paragraphs on the slides. They can do a Prezi. Again, same thing, please don't have too much text on the slides. They can do a poster and then present the information. They can do a carousel style with images and point form notes, sort of like those scientific posters, the 3-panel posters. They can do that. They can do an interview, a talk show. They can pretend they're on Ellen, on Oprah, etc. Or if they have any of their own ideas, they can come speak to me before starting to work on this presentation. So this presentation is about 10 to 15 minutes. Again, depending on the size of your class, you can make it more, you can make it less. And then 3 minutes minimum per person. And then I'm also going to ask them, and in order to prepare them for university, as this is a 4U class, or you can use this with a 3U class, they have to hand in a bibliography with all the sources that they used in APA format. And then I wrote here, attention, ne lisez pas votre présentation du papier. Pratiquez bien votre présentation. So what I'm saying is that please do not read your presentation from the paper. A lot of students tend to go up there and just start reading from a paper. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for them to engage their peers, engage myself. And before they do that, they can of course come see me if they need help with pronouncing any difficult words. So the day of the presentation, what makes this different is that I find often students sit there and watch oral presentations and they're not really paying attention. They don't care about what's going on. They just are waiting. They're waiting for the period to end. So what I propose is that during each presentation, each student in the class has to write 1 or 2 things that they learned about this country or this culture from the presentation. So I'm going to have colored sticky notes. And the students would have to write 1 or 2 things about each presentation on a color sticky note. They also have to write a question that they have about this country. What do I want to know more about this country or this culture? Is there a theme, a subject, or an aspect that I'm interested in and there wasn't enough time to talk about it during the presentation? So on a regular yellow sticky note, the students would each have to write 1 question that they have about the country or the culture. And then they would have to, what I would do is I would put flags of each country, the 10 different countries, on the back wall of the classroom. At the back wall of the classroom. During the last 5 minutes of the period, all the students would have to put up their color sticky notes, their ideas, their thoughts, what they learned around each flag of the countries. And then they would also have to put their yellow sticky notes on chart paper, on 1 chart paper per group, so 1 chart paper per country, and they would have to include their thoughts, their questions that they have for that group. And then that's an activity that you can do where the group who presented, they take home that chart paper and they have to answer those questions. And then that can be a follow-up oral presentation. So this way, with the sticky note idea, students are paying attention, students are engaged, and they're more inclined to pay attention. So here's the rubric. This is very detailed rubric. So we have knowledge and understanding, that's a group mark, of the content. Did I follow the checklist, la liste de vérification? So did I do my research? Did I understand the country, the culture? Thinking and inquiry. So that's just making sure that they respected the APA format for the bibliography, that they organized their information in a logical and coherent way. Were the structure of the ideas and the transitions, did they use transition words? Was it logical? Did they choose pictures that represented the expressions, the idiomatic expressions properly? And did they explain each idiomatic expression properly in standard French so that we could understand? That's the thinking and inquiry portion of that mark. We also have communication. So did they not use English structures? Did they use an appropriate vocabulary for the task? Maybe new words that they've learned. We want to make sure that they didn't have too many grammar errors, spelling errors, or sentence structure errors, so that way we can understand what they're saying. So that's in the content. And the oral part, did they pronounce the words properly? Did they speak too fast or too slow? How was their tone, their volume, their posture, their eye contact? Did they look around the classroom and look at their peers? Or did they focus on looking at me the entire time? Did they show that they practiced before presenting? And this important part, they did not read off of the paper. That's communication. And then finally, we have mise en pratique, application. So this is, again, individual mark. So the comparison, how did this culture from this Francophone community, how is it different or how is it similar to mine? That's application. Did they make clear and coherent personal connections between the country that they were assigned and their own? And were they able to apply their research and use their knowledge of French in the context of an oral presentation in order to inform their peers about the culture of the given country? So it's out of 40. That's my standard rubric. And my approach is that I like to give comments, give feedback, but I also like to have this thing called votre plan d'action. Ce que vous allez faire la prochaine fois pour améliorer. So what I expect here is that once I give them back their mark, they look it over, they have questions, whatever, then I want them to come up with an action plan. What are 1 or 2 things that I can improve on for next time? And I want them to show me it at the end of the period so I can have a record. I can take a picture of what they wrote or write it down. what their action plan is to improve for the next time. That way, they're continuously learning. And that is the final project. So I hope you're inspired, and this is an idea that you can use in your FSL classroom to engage students and to have a great oral presentation. Thank you.